Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Awakening Potential Show. This is where ordinary softens and extraordinary is allowed to emerge. I'm your host, Karen Rudolph, and this show is for visionaries, right? Who's carried a lot and learned a lot and quietly know there's so much more. Not more to do, rather more to remember. So here we talk about awakening, not as a concept, rather as a lived experience through real stories, embodied wisdom, and conversations that meet people exactly where they are. So, this is where sassy confidence meets classy wisdom and badassy brilliance gets to be expressed without apology. So, take a breath and just relax and be here, and let's begin. So today I'm honored to share the space with someone whose journey truly reflects the very heart of this work. My guest, Elizabeth Wilson, who shares content focused on conscious living, personal growth, and real life transformation. You'll have to forgive my voice. I'm so congested. This is season here in Florida. Excuse me. Elizabeth is an author. She's a storyteller. She's created a complete Christian-centered consciousness arc for human development to support modern thinkers becoming free and equipped and sovereign in 1 year. So, a warm welcome to Elizabeth A. Wilson. Welcome to the Awakening Potential Show. I told you,
Thank you.
real and authentic.
Thank you so much, Karen. Thank you for having me today. And I'm right there with you with the snotty sinuses and the watery eyes. It's the pollen outside in Florida right
Yeah.
now, isn't it? So I'm right there with you. It's an honor to be here with you today. I think what you're doing is so lovely. And I think we're going to have a wonderful conversation today.
Absolutely. And I just your voice is such music to my ear. Living here in Florida, we don't hear a lot of different cultural tones, I'm going to say, because I just think it's amazing. I'm on a call every week out of Australia, and I just sit there and listen to the tones of the Australian accent. We don't have
Mm.
many, so I just love yours. So where are you originally from?
I'm from England. I spent most of my life in countries that were not my home, if you like. I was moved to Norway when I was 3 years old and but raised as English. So I was an English girl living in Norway. And
Oh,
then when I was 18, I went back to England to study and I thought, yay, I'm going to go back home. But by then, of course, I had missed everything. So I felt like a foreigner then too. I did college and my early career in Great Britain. And then when my firstborn was just born, we moved to America. And I've been here for 15 years now. So you could say I've been a foreigner my whole life, but it has taught me that there's a difference between house and home, and that home is an internal essence that we carry with us everywhere we go. And gosh, I agree with you so much. Isn't it lovely to hear the different cadence and the different tones and the different
yes.
signatures in people's voices and accents? That's
Love
something that
it.
I've always adored because it reminds me that everyone has a story, everyone has experiences, and life is so, so rich. And
Yeah.
honestly, Karen, I don't mean to pivot here, but it's one of the things that breaks my heart a little bit with the current rise of AI and AI generated content, because I find that I've lost so many of the beautiful sounds and tones and cadences of people's writing. And everyone's become these sort of pseudo philosophical poets, and
Yeah.
everyone's posts sound the same. I think that accent and dialect and unique tone and sovereign frequency that transmits both through our spoken word and also through our written word. And it carries with us so much of that embodied wisdom and
Mhm.
that you speak of so fluently, that
Yeah.
wisdom that's just in our bones. It's just longing to come
Exactly.
out.
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, it's music to my ears. So thank you for gifting me with that because it truly is. Listen to you all day long. So share with me if you would. Well, first off, I always like to ask, what did you play with as a child? I'm curious.
Oh, wow. I don't think I've ever been asked that before. What an
Good.
interesting question. What did I play with as a child? I loved imagination games. I love make-believe stories. We're a couple of orphans and we're running away into the woods and we have to escape the trolls and we have to get to the special place in time. Those sorts of stories. We loved doing that out in the woods in Norway. It was part of an unspoken rule of culture that we go outside no matter the weather. So whether it was freezing cold with 10 feet of snow, we'd be out there playing. So I was always out there in the world playing imagination. Sometimes I would be inside, but still it would be with dolls, or it would be with Legos, or it would be some other world building kind of game and way of connecting with my friends and my siblings. I thought
I
that
love
was
it.
it, yeah.
So, which brings me to the next question. If you'll share your story, how does your imagination and what you played with as a child relate to who you are within your story that brings you to today?
That's cool. You're good at this, aren't you, Karen? These are really cool
Doing
questions.
it all.
Yeah, really good questions. Well, honestly, when I was 3 years old, this is one of my first formed memories. When I was 3 years old, I was climbing up the stairs. I was on all fours. That's how I know my age. I was climbing up the stairs and I suddenly realized that I could hear myself inside my mind. And I didn't know how to express this and ask my mother, what is this thing? Why am I aware of myself in my mind? I didn't know how to ask her about it. So I just said, I can talk without moving my lips. That was me trying to say, I'm thinking.
Right.
And she didn't know what I was trying to say. But I realized I was in my mind. And then I realized that I was thinking about being in my mind. And then I realized that I was thinking about thinking and that I was thinking about thinking. And that was the first time my mind sort of opened and I became what some people call claircognizant, someone who knows themselves and who has an ability to be, well, I suppose awareness is the simplest word. That set me off on a lifelong journey of talking to God. Who am I? Who are you? What is this? What's happening? And those, I think my whole life, or my childhood especially, around am I English or Norwegian? Am I American? Where do I belong? Who am I? Who do I identify with? Where do I live? What's my real
Right.
home? Who are my people? Along with what is God? What is life? What's this planet experience all about? And the world building games that we played as young children, they all sort of helped me arrange my understanding into an ontology, which is now called the sovereign way. And it is what it is now because I'm a grown up and I'm mature and I've developed very complicated ways of describing very simple things the adults like to do. But back to your question, so poignantly asked, how my imagination was formed in over 4 decades of and thinking about God, the source of all thought, and thinking about me, the recipient and transmission of all thought. My imagination really was the world builder in which I was able to formulate what I came to, I guess. That's such a good question. Did I even come close to answering?
Of course, yeah, it comes from your heart. Me, and this is a lot of what I love to do, is get people out of their head thinking and back into their heart to who they truly are. And when you ask these questions that are a little, you had to, granted you were thinking about it, but I'm willing to bet you were reliving some of that experience where you, yeah,
Absolutely.
hopefully it was a good experience. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I had a troubled childhood like most of us did, and I also had a blessed and privileged childhood in the
Yeah.
ways that my parents were able to create at the time. So asking questions that pivot people out of French narrative and bring them into a present moment, even if that moment is inside a construct of memory, it's still a present experience of awareness,
Exactly.
speaking from the heart. I hear you saying it's nice to get people out of thinking, and I agree with that. However, I have
Yeah.
come to a place of my understanding that true embodiment, true sovereignty, and true embodiment is not bypassing the mind.
No,
And I know
no.
that's not what you meant at all, but you triggered an idea here, which as I was raising up through ministry, I spent a lot of time with spiritualists, we're in New Thought, in New Age, and in many different Christian denominations also. And very often there is this confusion that in order to know God or in order to know ourselves, we have to exit the mind. We have to still the mind, silence the mind, somehow escape the mind and find ourselves in a still small place somewhere under layers and layers of ego and trauma. But I've discovered that actually embodying the mind seeing the mind and the brain and the whole operating system as a part of the divine construct that we are on this planet, that's actually
Mhm.
been far more freeing for me than trying to silence something that was never meant to be still. We are going to think. We do think.
Right.
And thinking about thinking has actually been very liberating for me.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree with you more where I was going with it often, and I've been on many shows. They'll say, give me 10 questions and ask me, and it keeps me up here. And it's not the authenticity
Mhm.
isn't because it's been pre-framed in a sense.
Mhm.
That's more or less where I was going with that.
Sure.
But I couldn't agree with you more, embodiment being it all. So obviously you've had a very rich full life. What got you've had these experiences as a young child, you've gotten into a sovereign way, you went into ministry. Tell me more what brought you up through where you are today.
Well, the real pivot was 15 years ago when I moved to America from England. In England, I had a sensible education, I had a sensible career. I married a sensible guy who also had a sensible career, and we were following the sensible track. We were going to live in a sensible house, we were going to have sensible children, and we were going to retire one day and live happily on our sensible retirement income. Then we moved to America, and Karen, this place is nuts. This place is the Wild West.
Yes.
It was incredible. Arriving in this country, something shifted, and it wasn't just because I suddenly had to drive on the other side of the road or I had to do my best to avoid bread with sugar in it, which is very difficult to do in this country. It was because I was surrounded by so much diversity of thought, diversity of religious understanding and expression, so much diversity of energy, so many different kinds of human beings, and so many different ways of expressing. And I had suppressed, if you like, the divine understanding that I had when I was very young. I'd suppressed that because I'd become a sensible person. But here it was unleashed. It was helped by when my husband said, well, what is it that you really want to do? And I tried to remember, when was the last time I really knew what I wanted to do? I didn't want to have this sensible career in project management. And I thought back to my childhood, and the last time I knew what I really wanted to do, I wanted to have a family and write a book. So that's simple enough. So I sat down and I started writing a book. I didn't know what to write about. My husband said, what do you believe in? And at that point, I believed in very little. I said, well, I suppose I believe in angels, you could say, some sort of supernatural presence. And what came out was a hilarious comic fantasy called Ascension Denied, which was set in the afterlife, in a purgatorial afterlife, where overpopulation is preventing people from ascending to their final destination, a rollicking adventure full of rich with symbolism from all kinds of different religions, different mythological representations of what happens after death. And I had so much fun writing it. But more importantly, what happened when I was writing is what you probably are familiar with, is almost like a channeling. It's like you start writing something from the heart and outpours this wisdom you didn't even know you had, outpours this remembering even about intricate things like the operations of the universe and the administration of consciousness and energy, just started coming out. And I shaped it into this novel, this fantasy story. During that time, I accidentally, because that's how God works through accidents, I accidentally ended up mentoring with Scott Siensen, who is the New York Times bestselling author of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel, Jurassic Park series, many other different names that we know and love. I started mentoring with him. We co-wrote a book called The Humbug Murders because, like you, he liked the English accent, so he thought that would be handy. Working with him, I got to understand the hero's journey. Describing and developing characters over the course of fictional stories helped me understand the ontology of human formation.
Absolutely.
It also brought me into First Church, which was Sarasota Center of Light, which was a metaphysical spirituality center.
Yes.
Loved them very much. And that's where I first began training in ministry. By this point, I had remembered that I know God and I love God and I want to share God with others. And that's really what ministry is about, pouring forth a divine frequency and transmission that really does help to restore and refresh. I began working with them and I learned about the Holy Spirit. I learned about how it works and moves and connects us all, but I was missing many key foundational pieces that still had me kind of floating about a little bit like a dandelion seed. Then I shifted my focus to New Thought, and I was taken under the wing of my mentor, Reverend Elizabeth Thompson, at the Unity Church in
Yes,
Paris.
yes.
There I studied mind over matter. I studied the power of language. I studied Christ consciousness. Still, I was missing some powerful pieces. But it was building and my belief system more full-bodied, you could say, by following these different paths for a little while. I got into energy work. I learned Reiki and became a Reiki master teacher. When I thought I'd figured it all out, I thought, now I get it. You got to maintain your energy to a certain frequency, and then you'll manifest the thing you think you want. How simple is that? I thought I had it figured out, Karen. So my husband and I, after Hurricane Irma, lost all his contracts, and we were suddenly faced with no income. So we thought, no worries, we'll just manifest the thing that we think we want. And at the time, he was a wonderful chocolatier. He would make these beautiful organic chocolates, would infuse them with essential oils and Reiki. They were so popular, people loved them. And we thought, this is a sure bet. So we put our house on the market and then we moved out to Colorado to start a chocolate factory. Well, it turns out it takes a lot of chocolate to replace a family income. And there was no way that we were going to be able to make chocolates fast enough. It would take him, because the process was mindful. It wasn't
Right.
about creating vast vats of chocolate using sugar or other cheap products. It was about infusing individual chocolates with powerful prayer. And that's not something you can speed up or scale.
Right.
So we would find that to sell $50 worth of chocolates would take us almost a whole day's worth of preparation and packaging and travel. We did get to do a few cool partnerships. We partnered with breweries, we partnered with craft stores, we partnered with festivals. But in the end, Karen, we just couldn't do it and the business failed. We lost everything. And the next thing we knew, my husband and me and our two children, aged 2 and 6, were living in a derelict barn. Yeah, broken windows with cracks, with doors that were tied together with bungee rope to prevent the
Mm.
bears from coming in. And I remember this one night when a storm was coming in and the wind was so intense that the entire building was shifting. We were on the top level of the barn and the chickens were underneath. Karen, that frickin' rooster at 3 in the morning, that frickin' rooster.
I can imagine.
This one night, full moon was pouring in from this window, cracked window, full moon pouring in. And I'm bathing in this full moon, and I've got my daughters pressed up against my bosom. And I was either singing or I was moaning in fear. I don't know. The bears were outside the door, scratching at it, sniffing around. And my husband was between us and the door with his knife, just protecting us. And I remember thinking, how did this happen? Because we were high vibing, conscious, loving, great people. We had a clear vision. We were thinking about thinking. How on earth could it be that I lost everything? We failed so badly to the point where we are literally at risk of being devoured by predators. How could this happen? And something really peaceful came over me. I think it was grace, Karen. I think it was the first time that I actually felt, tasted, smelt the
Mm.
presence of God here and now, not as a theological idea, but with me. That word with, ITH, with me, God with us. That is Emmanuel. That's Jesus. And I had never experienced it in such a real way. So from that point on, suddenly the bears went away. A flash of lightning came and scattered the bears. So we were fine that night. Shortly after followed, we found a little wooden church called St. Lawrence Episcopal Church in Conifer, Colorado, and the pastor there was called Nancy Malloy. She was a converted Jew who had found Jesus when she was in her 20s, fallen in love. And she was this beautiful little woman like Mother Mary. And she had this way of, whenever we met her, she would beam, like she would light up like the most
Mm.
important people in the universe had just arrived. And she
Okay.
made us feel so loved. She gave us a car. She gave us a plot garden in the church where we could grow our own vegetables. And suddenly we were in communion with others. This was the Episcopal way, if you're not familiar with it, it's specifically a denomination that's designed by lay people for lay people. And it's the lay people who choose their hierarchical leaders, other as opposed to some of the other denominations that are inverted, where you have a line of succession of popes and bishops and deacons. This was the other way around, which was very inspiring to me that actually groups of people organize when they're allowed to, they will organize in a sovereign way to look after each other and their communities. And so we were all gardening together, we were all eating together.
Mm.
Nancy asked me one day, would you like to class on mysticism and manifestation here in the church? I said, yes, please, I'd love to do that. During one of those classes, a lady puts her hand up in the back and she goes, would you mind helping me with something? She goes, because you're the lady who lives in the barn, she says. And I'm like, yep, that's me. She goes, I have to go to Manhattan for the winter. And I wonder if you wouldn't mind living in my cabin for the winter so that the pipes don't freeze over. And I just felt delivered, like someone had just hoiked me out of my mess and plonked me into heaven. And
Yeah.
this she was talking about, it wasn't just a cabin, it was a mansion. It was this beautiful wooden mansion on 180 acres of Rocky Mountain splendor, untouched Rocky
Mm.
Mountains. And we lived there for 7 months. And we thought, well, 7 months, that's more than enough time to get back on our feet. We did everything. We went to the business schools, we went to MLMs, we started, you name it. We did the things we were supposed to do. We
Mm.
visualized, we thought about thinking, we elevated our vibration. And at the end of 7 months, nothing. Again, facing homelessness, again, facing the unthinkable with our two little children. And Becky
Mm.
needed her house back. There's no way around it. So we found ourselves, the next thing I know, a woman reaches out to me on Instagram and she says, I'm a pagan priestess. I do witch circles out in the poor outback land in Colorado in Delta County. And she goes, we're preparing for winter because we live in a yurt. And I need a family to come and stay on our land and help us prepare for winter. So I'm out of the Episcopal way and I'm plonked into this pagan priestess raw land.
Yeah.
Our Episcopal friends managed to raise a bit of money and they bought us a canvas tent and we're pitching this tent out there in the raw wild land. I remember one night we were so it say raw land. I mean a really steep, harsh environment. We had to literally use a pickaxe to flatten out a bit of land to pitch the tent on. I have
Mm.
a beautiful picture of myself in the pickaxe in my finest dress because even though I felt like I was at rock bottom, the least I can do is wear a pretty hat.
Of
I had
course.
my pretty dress, and there I was with the pickaxe. But I remember this one night where I was at the top of this like mountain, if you like. That's where
Mhm.
we hung the solar bag. A solar bag is like a black bag that heats up the water with the sun, and then at the end of the day, it's nice and warm when you open the bag up and it showers over your body. So I was up there under this solar bag. I'm feeling the frigid cold air at 9,000 foot elevation. I'm feeling the scalding heat of the water. My eyes are 100 miles of vast expanse. Am I watching and hearing the coyote run across the distant hills? And my presence is acutely here in the immediate because there are bears and lions prowling the land. So I am here and I am very far away. I am very, very, and my feet are in such pain from walking on cactus because it was a cactus-ridden landscape that you had to cross to get to the shower.
Oh, God bless.
And I think it was in that moment that I realized everything is alive. And
Yeah.
that's when God went from, so in the early days, he had been something I would think about or talk to, like an, then in the later days, he became a visceral presence. When I was studying, the spirit and working with Reiki, he became an energy. But in that moment on that mountain, he became the very substance of reality.
Mhm.
And every single element began to respond to my words, to my mind. And I
Mhm.
discovered that had been given, at the beginning of time, we had been given the authority and the sovereignty to be fully with God, the body of all things. God is neither out there nor in here, and both.
Right.
He is actually every cubic ounce every cubic inch of all of reality. And the substance came alive for me in a completely different way then. Um, this goes on. I won't bore you with too many details, but we were suddenly pulled out of that environment and had to go back to England. My mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So the next thing we know, we no longer live in the tent in the wild. Now we live in a small brick house in an industrial city in inner city Derby. And had to very quickly get to work with precision energy work, precision prayer protocols, with new neurological protocols to help my mother recover from a very, very dark void that she was in. And it worked. And in the success of what we were doing there, which of course was an amalgamation of everything that I had learned up until that point, applied in a very real way to bring my mother back to life. In space, God suddenly said, remember that house you gave up all those years ago to go to Colorado to start a chocolate factory? Remember back then when you lived in Florida? Go back to that house. We said, no, we can't go back to that house because, well, it's been on the market. We put it on the market and it never sold. So now there's $100,000 in really bad debt because we hadn't paid for that at all. We were homeless. We were living in a freaking tent. No way we can go back to this house. It belongs to the bank now. And God says, go back to the house. Well, I took my mother back to the house and my husband and my children, and I connected in. That's in Sarasota. I connected in with experts in the holistic medicine field here in this town. And I was able to work with them and trade with them knowledge, wisdom, time, expertise, and able to
Right.
get my mother so much more of the support that she needed. But it didn't solve the debt problem. It so happened that this is when COVID started and the governor placed a moratorium on all evictions. So we knew we could stay in this house. So we were basically squatting in our own house. We could
Wow.
stay in this house until the moratorium was lifted. And I thought that's more than enough time. I have to manifest, right? So I'm like, I'm going to think about thinking, I'm going to visualize, I'm going to purify my vibration, and I'm going to manifest the $100,000 that I need to pay off this loan. Because we'd spoken with the mortgage company. We said, can we put some money towards it now that we're earning a little bit of money again? And they said, no, you can't do that. You have to pay off the back debt before you can start contributing. So I can't do anything until I have $100,000. And I'm like, all right, well, now I'm older, I'm wiser, I've been through it now. I'm going to think about thinking, raise my vibration, visualize what I think I want, and then I'm going to
Right.
make it. A year later, the moratorium is about to be lifted, and nothing, just like before, none of my efforts have yielded anything. Well, that's not true. I'd helped a lot of people. I had a lot of wonderful experiences. I had so many good conversations and friendships, so many lives healed, so many universes opened up, but no cash.
Right.
Everything but cash. The whole world but cash. So when it comes to the very, very moment, we know we have until June 2021 before this moratorium is lifted. Now it's April 2021. I'd made $450 that month. My husband and I find ourselves by accident at an evangelical Christian service. Now, this is somewhere I would normally never have set foot. I'm a millennial, Karen. I was raised to believe that I myself am totally unworthy. You can't call me a sinner. I don't need saving. I'm supposed to do everything by myself. That's how we were raised.
Right.
And so I'd gone a place where someone might try to condemn me for being who I am. That was the I had against this community. But
Sure.
somehow by accident we find ourselves in this worship. There's 2,000 people praising the Lord together. There's this spiritual outpouring unlike anything I have experienced in the hottest of sweat lodges or the most ecstatic of women's circles. Nothing came close to this. And it was in that space that my husband and I finally sort of surrendered all control and got on our knees and just said, save us. Please just save us. Save us from constructs that we have around how things should come to us. Save us from the burden of responsibility for purifying our mind and purifying our vibration and knowing exactly what we're supposed to be creating. Release us and deliver us from all of the unseen tangles of traumas and limiting beliefs that we can't all out because there's generations worth of them. It's such a tangled mess. Deliver us from all of that. 3 days later, Karen, a letter comes in the post and it says, We are a third-party agency and we have a grant from the government to help people who are behind on their mortgage because of
Mm.
business failure and natural disaster. Would you like a call? I call them up. They're like, jump through these. So I jumped through the hoops. Impossible hoops, by the way. We had to go from earning $450 in April to earning $6,000 in May. And I was at this point, we'd lived cash free for so long that I was like, $6,000? How
Sure.
many zeros is in that? Like 12? I have no idea how to make that money. But when God to do something, you know you can. And
Absolutely.
lo and behold, it was done. So all that money, that $100,000 was wiped. They wiped the penalties, the
Love
fees,
it.
the interest on the interest, and what we actually owed on the principal. Well, that was just added to the back of the mortgage. So nobody lost anything. The mortgage company didn't lose anything. We didn't lose anything, and our credit was restored. And now here we are, 4 years later, in the house that we had left all those years ago to go and start a magic chocolate factory. We're now back in that same spot where God intended us to be the whole time, in our home, where our house has converged completely. We are now, it's a homestead that is operating at 70% self-sufficiency. I
Love
work from
it.
home. I love my children at home. I get to devote to my at home. I get to wake up at 6 a.m. every day, and that's when I start my first chore, which is cooking lunch for my children.
Mm.
This is a magic house.
I
It
love
was
it.
supposed to be. So, so that's a long story, but to show that I've learned very much over the years about presence, about thinking, about energy, how energy responds to consciousness,
Yes.
how energy responds to consciousness that you don't even know is operating, and how we're working in a collective consciousness where everybody else's energetic input is immediately affecting me. And if I want to be sovereign over that, if I want to be sovereign within that, then I need more than my own mind, my own energy, my own ideals and visions to manifest. I
Right.
actually need a savior. I need a higher construct. I need someone to hold space for me to grow in so that I'm
Yes.
not growing in a wild sandstorm of sand or fact particles where everyone's truth matters equally and everyone's manifesting all kinds of stuff all the time. I need an oasis in a sandstorm if I am to grow. And I have that now. It took me
Oh,
all the way till 2021 to realize that who I had thought of as I had thought of Jesus as a master teacher in a pantheon of other enlightened masters or some other kind of mythological construct that's useful to help us arrange our minds around. But he had become so much more than that on my path. He had become actually a savior, a friend, a partner, God with us. There's that with word again. He was
mhm.
the grace that had been there the whole time. And when
Mhm.
I became conscious of that and aware of that, that's when everything changed. And
Oh,
that's
what a
how the
beautiful
Sovereign Way was
story.
born.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a sec because there's so much richness in your journey. And I'm sure a lot of listeners will be going like, oh my God, Colorado is freezing cold and you're out there with two young kids and your husband and life. And they're all experiences, obviously grew you more so as a family, not just individually. But I'm curious, I got the, like curious. It's you able, like your children were you, how are they able to get into your world, so to speak, to think and how are they today, as well as your husband, to align with you had this experience, right? You saw the light, as it were. What I heard in this, more importantly than anything else, was there was surrender there as well. How would you reframe this in such a way with the family? The unity within the family that helps lift you to, because you couldn't have done it alone, obviously, and you had the support of spirit at the same token, and a family. Well, what did that look like?
Well, yes, we all support of spirit. It's very important to remember that spirit primarily works through other people. Sometimes in the spiritual world, we think that in order to touch spirit, I have to close myself in and go into a quiet place and
Right.
try and connect with some sort of lightning rod that goes up to some sort of cosmic center up there. But
Right.
actually, most of the time, spirit is moving through other people, through communities and families and friends. And honestly, we were never alone that whole time. I know it's like a huge story with lots of miracles and magic, and it is. But there were the grocery store that we smiled at every day and that smiled at us. There was a private school called Harmony Hills going to put on a play of The Wizard of Oz, and so they put out a little notice saying, "Are there any homeschooled children who would like to be little, what are the little candy people in The Wizard of
What?
Oz?" So my
Yeah.
daughter joined that play, and lo and behold, they loved her so much they gave her a scholarship. So she's now at this very expensive, very beautiful private school. My husband was juniper trees as a farmhand had some long, long discussions well in the night with their
Mhm.
smoking their pipes around the fire. There was the bumped into down at the reservoir who said, "I had a dream last night that a woman with octopus hair who could teach me Reiki." And suddenly I had a client that I could work with. There were real human beings with real stories and real friendship and kindness and generosity. And that's, maybe back to my point about my experience here in America. I may have opinions about the political landscape right now, but the truth is, what America is, who America is, are the absolutely extraordinary people that I have met every single step of the way. We were never alone. Whether it was the Episcopal community that gathered around us to keep us safe in our most vulnerable time, or whether it was the really wild and far out family that had their own time zone, even out in the wild in Colorado, there was always intimacy, there was always communion, and there was always community. My children had friends. They had other mentors other than just us parents. There were counselors, there were pastors, there was clergy. Um,
Mhm.
we went through and downs, my husband and I, decisions to make. It's not easy to decide to go and live in a tent in the wild.
Mhm.
It's not easy to decide when you're finally getting into the groove of living off and living wild. It's not easy to decide to give all that up and go and live in a brick house in an industrial town on the other side of the world. We made big decisions. The reason, I guess, made it 17 years into our marriage without ever having an argument. That's the truth about our marriage. We've never actually had an argument. Even in our disagreements, there's always been friendship has always come first. Honesty is a very close second.
Yeah.
So that's the answer. We're a very close pod, my husband and I and our two children, because of what we've been through. We're very close.
Yeah.
Our time together is sacred. Even now, if it's just a cup of tea in the evening, a board game or a stupid show on TV that is nothing but brain rot and a lot of good belly laughs, that time is sacred to us. You asked how are the children? They're great. They are fantastic. When we did decide to come back to Sarasota, I was wondering, are we going to be okay putting them back into school because they'd been homeschooled for so long and they'd had such an unusual experience of life up to that point, which
Yeah.
may be unrelatable to many American children. And I worried get back into school, but magically they both slid right into a fantastic school that is has been very of them. My youngest straight A's and has been for 4 straight quarters this year. My
Oh,
oldest is involved in ministry and in musical theatre and in various youth groups. So they're thriving actually. And I'd love to say it's because I'm such a great mum. And
which you are.
I am a good mother. I am a good mother. And they have a good father. And they've had good support. And they've had good
Yeah.
friends. And we've raised them above all to be sovereign.
Yeah.
They do have a faith life. They do go to church. My oldest knows Jesus on a personal level. My youngest is curious and leaning in. But more than sort of religious identity, we've taught them to be sovereign, to know who they are, and to know that God is with them. Whatever church they step foot into, that they
Yeah.
can find him there. Uh,
Good.
and that helps with our peace when things feel turbulent.
Oh, God. You have, it's just an amazing story and amazing gift that you're bringing the listening audience as well. Speaking of gifts, you have something for the listening audience. What might that be?
That's right. I'm so happy to share this. Thank you, Karen. I don't know if if your audience can see us. or if this is sound
Some
okay.
can see and some can hear.
Okay, well,
So,
for those of you who
yes, your
see,
book.
this is my book. It's called The Sovereign Way. It's a beautiful hardback book with real pages that turn. It's an incredible experience. This is something that you can get on Amazon, but I am really proud and honored to offer you this story, this book free as a PDF. It's an ontology. So it helps us to arrange our thinking around who God is and who I am, and how I hold my mastery when the environment is turbulent. The book does have a little bit of the story that I shared with you today, but mostly it's about the ontology itself. So it's going to be really useful for you to help you feel free and equipped and sovereign in these challenging times that are to come. Karen, it's going to be out there for a minute. It's going to be crazy. It's going to get crazier than it is today. And the people who can make it through gracefully are the ones who are resilient and sovereign. Everybody is equipped for what's coming. Has anything missing. It's all right there. And this book, The Sovereign Way, will help you hold that mindset and that frame of vibration and that state of grace to be able to be surrendered yet masterful, to be present and powerful with poise, come what may. And I'm gonna get all of your listeners for as a you can download and then you can read it on your device in your own time.
Beautiful. Thank you. That's awesome. And Elizabeth, if you would definitely send me the link, all of Elizabeth's contact information and the link to the book, as well as anything else she's putting in there, will be in the show notes. So definitely look her up. She's got a heart of gold. I know her personally, and I'm sure this book will be something that you definitely want to read for sure. I know I want to get a copy of it for sure, for sure. Thank you for your generosity. And before we end, I always ask, oh, I call them pearls of wisdom. What is the pearl of wisdom that you'd like to leave the listening audience with today?
I think the sum of all I've learned on the journey, it can all be summed up with this nugget that my mother gave me when I was very, very little. Result of an ancient magic spell that was passed down to her through generations and generations of potato farmers. And it goes like this: it'll be all right in the end. That's it. It'll always work out all right in the end. There is a promise. There is an anointing, there is an ordination, and there is a promise that all is well.
Mhm.
That's it. So simple.
I love it. Your story is such a powerful reminder that transformation doesn't happen all at once, that it begins in the moment that we become aware and conscious and present, and continues with those brave, bold, badassy choices that we make along the way. Elizabeth Wilson, thank you. Honesty, your generosity, for your heart and your willingness to really share the journey with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Karen. It's been an absolute delight.
Thank you. We'll continue a conversation for sure. So, to everyone listening, remember this: the bridge from ordinary to extraordinary is built with small steps of change and big leaps of faith. You're more than you know, so keep showing up, keep listening, and awakening your potential. You're worth it. So, for anyone who heard something in the conversation today, please reach out to Elizabeth. Her contact be in the show notes as is. Go ahead, hold it up one more time. Her PDF version of The Sovereign Way is her gift to you, and it is a chock full, nice, beautiful context that you definitely want to wrap yourself around. And for anyone listening that has questions, feel free to reach out to Elizabeth or myself. I'm always the one answering. Elizabeth, are you? Yeah. We don't give it away for other people to answer or respond for us. You get us. So, till next time, make it an amazing day. And I look forward to hearing more from you and see you next time on the Awakening Potential Show. Bye for now.